Ready to find your flow? AFSA's got you covered.
That's right. The hands-on training lab in Richardson, Texas is where you trade PowerPoints for pipe wrenches. Real tools, real systems, and real experience you can actually use.
And if you're ready to test your skills, check out the hands-on NFPA 25 workshops, where you'll inspect, test, and maintain live sprinkler systems and fire pumps. No simulations, no fluff, just pressure, flow, and know-how.
It's the perfect way to get under pressure without cracking under it.
So get fired up and register today at firesprinkler.org. Spots fill faster than a charged branch line.
AFSA, where you don't just learn the code, you live it. Welcome to the K Factor podcast, where we turn up the heat on all things fire protection. Brought to you by the American Fire Sprinkler Association, this podcast sparks conversations about the latest technology, trends, and tools shaping the industry. Join the AFSA tech team as we fan the flames of innovation in fire safety.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the K Factor podcast. We have the pleasure of speaking with Jared Van Gammeren, president of Driven Fire Consultants. We've also got a sit-in. Eric is out teaching a course right now. We've got Kevin in, so if you hear a little bit of the laughing in the background, we got the troublemaker in from Maryland, and of course Nate on the controls, keeping us in check. Well, Jared, thank you so much for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So when we started this discussion, we were going to talk a little bit about BIM, which is interesting for me because I feel like since I've started in the industry, BIM has been talked about as if it's coming down the pathway. What's your thoughts with BIM?
I was able to do a presentation last AFSA on introduction to BIM. We've been doing it for a long time, but we as a company still feel like we're being introduced to it because it keeps changing. I think it's the kind of the sexy word of construction is we need to BIM the project. I don't think anybody, even on the construction teams, really sometimes know what that means.
So it's a verb.
It's a verb. It's a verb that nobody really knows what it means, it seems like. So that's the challenge that we face, as a consulting engineer, providing design and BIM for a contractor, sprinkler contractor, even becoming part of the engineering team on a project. Everybody wants it now because it's a popular phrase to BIM the project. Been doing some reading on it. Sometimes the owners don't really, a lot of times it's coming from the owner just because that's what they're hearing everybody's doing. They don't really know what they're looking for. So they're looking for a project that's BIM modeled. They're also looking for a project that's the best price. They kind of want all kinds of, they want all they want the best they can get for the best value. But when they're interviewing a lot of general contractors or construction managers to hire to build them a building, some of them are going best value, some of them are going, more technology, a better BIM process, a smoother operation. BIM is such a large term if you look at it holistically because it can go down to things such as, in your model as a building owner at the end of it, if you zoom in on a fire pump, if the data is entered correctly, you can click on that fire pump and see, serial number, when it should be maintained, the lifespan, energy output. Like there's all kinds of data that can be loaded into it. But obviously that all takes time. So a lot of the mechanical equipment in the building can be put on a maintenance schedule. They start talking about the different dimensions of BIM, and they start getting into 3D and 4D and 5D and
5D. We're starting to smell the fire pump burn out. Is that
pretty much? I know I helped teach an introduction to. Well, it was for the fitter course.
Yeah.
And I taught one of the classes or whatever, and there was a little snippet on BIM that was geared towards the fitters, and I was reading it, and I'm like, I don't even think I've heard of some of these terms. So, and again, some of it is cost effectiveness after the project's in place, maintenance of the building. So I think some owners are sold on some of those things can be done, but I don't think that they fully understand what the cost impact is going to be. If they really want to go that deep into BIM, there's going to be some serious cost impacts that I still have yet to see that it's going to offset the you're not going to save the money invested of the time that goes into it in some cases. And some facilities, I think, are into that. They just want it to be efficient. They want a working model of their facility that they can use for the lifespan of the building. But in today's market, it's what we're asked is, hey, how much more to BIM this thing? It's like, okay, well, what are the parameters? Kind of what I get into in my presentation at AFSA last year on the BIM side of it when we were writing it. Really it comes down to having an execution plan that the team has in place. And a lot of times the owners are going to multiple bidders because they want to get the best value, they want to get the best price. But what one team is presenting may be different than another team. Whereas some of these schools and some of these larger public facilities that we do, they do have a third party on or a general contractor or construction manager that's selected. They're very detailed. They have a good BIM execution plan.
Are they the BIMmer?
Yeah. They call it a VDC plan, a virtual design construct. I can't remember what VDC stands for. Yeah. Virtual design contract, I believe, is what it's for. Where we talk about, they talk about the duration, what the execution, what each player on the team is bringing, so that there's a clear-cut definition of your contract. There's level of detail, which is LOD. Depending on the type of facility, the LOD may be lower, maybe higher. If it's a military project, a lot of times the higher the number gets, the more detailed it is, the smaller the devices get that need to be put into your model. But sometimes the problem with having a low LOD, it sounds better because not everything's going in the model. But then for sprinkler contractors, if you're running your pipe and hangers aren't getting modeled, it's pretty hard to, know what you're running into because not everything above the ceiling is in the model. So a lot of times we see an LOD around 350 to 400 is kind of average.
When we say LOD, what do you mean?
It's level of detail.
Okay.
So sorry. Yeah. So level of detail as defined by the VDC plan. So it'll kind of say, typically the size of the device that's going into your model. The higher the value, if it's a 500, it goes down to I don't even know, like the eighth of an inch. Okay. Anything smaller than an eighth of an inch, like even guide wires and things like that need to go into the model so you know where those are. So the larger piping is missing that.
So to level set, VDC is the virtual design and construction. And when we talk about BIM, we're talking about building information modeling, which is a platform where you can take all of the trades and we always get frustrated, of course, in the sprinkler end that duct is running right through there. So hopefully it avoids stuff like that.
Yeah. It's a good practice. The problem with just like anything with the sprinkler side of it is that we're kind of an afterthought. All of the other trades are usually doing this at the engineering level. We get in on the engineering side of things. We're doing the consulting on the front end of the project. Sometimes that's nice because we can actually start putting at least some mains, capturing some space for standpipe piping, fire pump rooms, things like that. We can at least put some of that stuff in the model so the larger piping is accommodated for. All the way down to, some of them do take it to the next level with the fire protection, actually design everything, or at least pretty close. So there's piping in the model. But as, I'm assuming most people listen to this on the contracting end, usually you get kind of a hatch plan from the engineer, from the fire protection engineer, the mechanical engineer, or the architect saying, sprinkler per NFPA 13. It never seems to fail that the sprinkler contractor is the last guy to get his contract, just because everybody thinks, well, these guys are kind of the last ones in. Typically, the concrete, the foundation people, the structural packages are getting released. Fire protection is such a small percentage of the overall value on the project. They're more worried about the larger values,
the money makers.
The money makers, the scopes of work that if they can take 5, 6, 7% off. It's really going to have a huge impact on the overall price of the project. So sprinkler kind of falls towards the bottom of that pecking order. So they start issuing contracts to the plumbing contractor, the HVAC guys, the electrical guys. Well, they usually have one up on sprinkler contractors to begin with by getting a contract early. But typically the mechanical engineers, the electrical engineers have already got somewhat of a model together. So when they kick off BIM, at least the contractors that are hired to do the electrical work, the HVAC work, it's kind of directed by an engineer, and you kind of got to follow their layouts. Whereas fire sprinkler, you've pretty much got to get started. So, it never fails that the sprinkler contractor gets cut loose, and then there's a BIM kickoff meeting, week 1 or week 2. where you get together and talk about, okay, go over the VDC plan if they have one. Sometimes there isn't a VDC plan. They just say, hey, we'll figure it out when we get the contracts cut. Everybody gets together. Again, the mechanical, electrical guys already have a model ready to go. So, they're ready to...
Lucky them.
Yeah, they're ready to model. They're like, hey, let's start rocking here. Let's get going. And sprinkler contractors like, hey, I don't even have CAD files. I don't have backgrounds. I don't have Revit models. I don't have anything to go from. And from the time you get me that, it's probably going to be, I don't have a sprinkler designer sitting here with nothing to do. We've got other projects that we got to wrap up first.
So you're noticing that even on the virtual world, we're getting in on the back end.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Absolutely.
Just,
They typically get cut loose, and they're having a meeting within the first month, first couple of weeks. And they're expecting, the expectation from the construction manager is, hey, you need to at least have this area modeled. So basically you got to, as a contractor, you either got to get a consultant on board that's available, or you got to get your own designers in there to, hey, get this area modeled. And then again, just typically getting the files to even start from is usually a hassle, getting some stuff downloaded. There's not a lot of sprinkler contractors either that are working in Revit. That's one thing that a lot of the other trades are working in is a Revit model. So they're actively working in Revit, where a lot of sprinkler contractors are working either in a 2D or 3D program. So a lot of times they need to pull their DWG files out of a Revit model. There has been there's been a lot of movement in the Revit world lately with the fire sprinkler side of it. We've started engaging and drawing in Revit, but again, just like any new program, it takes a while to learn it. So it is nice if you're drawing in Revit because at least it's there and it's ready to go from a background standpoint. But the technology still has a little ways to go. So we're just kind of working on wrapping up one of our first Revit projects, and it's caused problematic just because of sloping pipe. It was a dry system, and the program isn't. I don't know if the program's not ready or if we don't fully understand the capabilities of it yet. We're still working through it. So just like anything with new technology, it takes a little while to figure that out. So
can you tell us a little bit about your company, Driven Fire Consultants, also where you kind of fit into that design plan and how that works?
Okay. Yeah, so Driven Fire Consultants, we're primarily a fire sprinkler design company. I mean, that's what we do. We design fire sprinkler systems, and then with the advent of bringing in more and more BIM, we've kind of had to shift and do a lot of BIM modeling just because that's what our clients need. So we do fire sprinkler design and BIM modeling, BIM for projects. We do some just BIM where the sprinkler contractor maybe already has a design done, and we're just doing the BIM for them. But in most cases, if we're BIMing it, we're designing it. I would say most of our work is fire sprinkler design work, where we do design, submittals, fabrication, and then if it's a BIM project, we're doing the 3D modeling and all those sorts of things. So Driven we started it in 2015, I believe, 2016, kind of right in that area. I come from a contractor background. I was an installer. So I went through AFSA's fitter course, long time ago. I don't want to date myself, but
3 years ago.
Yeah. So I was a fitter for a company. I was on the road a lot. Just in our region, I'm from Sioux Falls, South Dakota area. I'm actually from the Iowa side of the border, but Sioux Falls now is about 220,000 people. If you want to do some larger projects in our neck of the woods, you kind of have to do a little traveling. So everybody, if you were an installer up in our network, you were usually on the road a fair amount. So I was on the road a fair amount. I was kind of hoping to not live that life forever. So I went back to school for architectural drafting, hoping to become a designer. I actually worked, my first stint as a sprinkler installer was for a company out of California that was doing a VA retrofit in Sioux Falls. Those designers did a really good job. They came through, I think A&D Fire Protection was the name of the company. I think they might be owned by Hiller now. But they came through, and the designers did a phenomenal job of, designing it, and everything was fabbed. Really all we had to cut was hangers and drops, because they kind of went through. You could follow it was fascinating as an entry level, fitter. First I was a ground guy, just hauling material, and then if a guy was out for the day or something, I could help, install some piping. But it was always fascinating to me. I'd follow the little pencil marks on the grid, where the designer was actually surveying the facility, and I'm like, oh man, this is pretty cool. So I went from working for a company that did that for a year, and then I transitioned over to a company that didn't have the best success with fabrication. So they did a lot of bald pipe and straps, and I was like, man, this is polar opposite. I gotta figure out where I'm going, the elevations I'm going. I gotta cut all my pipe. So again, I always thought in the back of my head, there's got to be a better way to do this. So that was part of my desire to learn design, was to help out in the office if I got the opportunity to be a designer. And eventually, after a few years, I think I was in the field for about 7 or 8 years, got the opportunity. We had a designer leave, and I got the opportunity to step into the office and design for a little while. And that slowly moved into, I kind of knew the field side of things. So I designed for a while and transitioned into project management, field management, scheduling, things like that. But I really liked design.
Why? Because design's kind of a niche.
I just enjoy making it fit for the guys in the field, just because, I was out there for so long, and it was amazing how fast we could go when things fit. And then when we went to a design format where we were doing everything bald pipe and straps, it was amazing the amount of time it took to coordinate that from my end on the field side when I was running a job. All right, let's go talk to the tinner. Let's go talk to the plumber. Let's go talk to all these guys. And again, this was obviously before BIM and 3D modeling and things like that. I mean, everything was drawn on CAD software, but I was like, man, if they could have coordinated this from the office perspective, I know that they're busy too, but man, I got 3 guys here. We're trying to figure out where we're going to put this pipe. And right now we're just kind of standing around having a huddle meeting, figuring out what elevations we could go at. Just seemed to me like if we could do some of that stuff from a fabrication end of things, prefabricate the stuff, coordinate up front. So that was really my desire to get into design. And then I did it for a while. And then, when it comes to it's not like the fitters were ever thanking us for it, but, because it can always be done better, right? I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but I just really always enjoyed saving those guys time. If they're going to be on the road fitting pipe, for a large duration of time, if we can do something that can make it fit better, that was kind of always my passion behind it. I still love doing that. Still love helping the fitters. I love helping the companies that we work for, like, find a better way to do it. There's 10 different ways you can design a system typically, and our company always likes finding a niche where, hey, we could use this part of the code to make things better. That's always kind of fun to not just provide a design for them, just, hey, here's what we said to do a grid, this size and this size, this type of head. It's like, well, hey, could we use an extended coverage head because the water's really good, or have you seen this new technology that's out there? So that's kind of why I've always liked designing. It's also nice, like, now that all I do is consulting. So we ended up, we spun off this Driven Fire Consultants off of a contracting firm, and then that was in 2015. And then 2019 is when we separated and we bought it from the owner of that contracting firm. And we were just doing design. And again, our goal was hoping to get into consulting work, doing engineering work for GCs, construction management firms. But the problem in our region was, well, if we were the front end consultant, and then our contracting business was behind there bidding the installation work, there was always kind of this stigma of, well, are they getting an unfair advantage because they were the consultants on it? So we didn't end up getting on board on a lot of projects just because they didn't want to have that stigma. Conflict, yeah. They want to make sure there was a fair process. So that was part of our reason to separate and become just a consulting firm. So we did that in 2015. The other thing that's nice about having designers is all of our staff's home every night, other than me. I'm out on the road some doing sales, marketing. So everybody's, in the office. They don't have to travel. They don't have to be away from their homes every week. That was always challenging for us. Again, I always liked doing these really large projects. It was always fun to put your name on, an event center, or it's Sioux Falls. There's not a whole lot of high rises there, so right. Some of these larger facilities. But if you really want to do a lot of that stuff, you got to kind of stick your guys in a suitcase for a while, and that kind of just wasn't fun for us to do as a company to grow. We kind of had to increase our surrounding area. So
what are the pros and cons of utilizing BIM? What have you see really successful and maybe something that's not so?
If you get on a good team with a good BIM coordinator, there is kind of usually a point person there. I won't say usually. On our successful projects, there's usually a point person that's a good BIM coordinator that's kind of a good negotiator where, you're getting into a facility, you have to design it, everybody has to fit in the same space. There's always there's always some negotiating that goes on. And if you have a good virtual design coordinator in those meetings, making sure that it's somewhat fair, that, hey, the fire sprinkler guy doesn't always move. That seems to be the case in a lot of them where there isn't a BIM coordinator. Sometimes, the general contractor, construction manager will hire a third party to do their BIM coordination. And then a lot of times they'll see, oh, hey, company XYZ has the electrical, they have the plumbing, they have the HVAC. They've got 90% of the trades that are going in this model. Well, let's just have those guys run the meetings because they have the majority of it. That's usually when the sprinkler guys kind of get the shaft. We've been on a handful of projects in my contracting days where we didn't even know BIM happened. They just did it, and we never got invited.
Magical BIM pop up.
Yeah, magic. I was doing a casino hotel. I think it was a high rise in Davenport, Iowa. Rhythm City Casino, and the high rise, the hotel portion was a post tension concrete facility, and I went down to one of the meetings, and I noticed that part of the high rise was up already, and I'm like, I was under the assumption that we needed to put our inserts in before they started pouring the floors because you couldn't drill anchors into the floors, and went down there, and I was like sitting in a meeting, and I just kind of pulled the construction management guy. I'd done a handful of projects with this guy in the past, and it's like, hey, you guys are already going. Like, when's the BIM going to be starting? And they're like, what do you mean the BIM's done? Like, we're signed off on BIM. I'm like, they're like, you haven't been in those meetings? I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. It's like, oh man. Well, the mechanical coordinator, the mechanical contractor, they're doing most all the mechanical trades. They ran the show, and he was a pretty open book. He called the guy in and just ripped his butt right in front of us, and basically just said, well, sprinkler guys are taking precedence because you didn't invite him. So he's going to jump in there and pick his space, and he's going to tell you what you guys got to do to make his stuff fit. So, but yeah, that's some of the challenging part is it's sprinkler contractors a lot of times don't get invited. And sometimes just the
we're fun at the party. I don't know why they don't invite us.
I know. We're always in everybody's way, as everybody thinks. So we're always throwing things out like we can't move because of hydraulic concerns. And, the plumbers are, well, it needs to drain. So I don't know. It's a challenge being on a good team. I will say if you get a good team, it does help. Fabrication can fit pretty well. We've done a handful. Kind of our first BIM that we were doing was kind of out on the East Coast for a company out there. We did a lot of work for Anchor Fire, did a lot of hospital work. Then I was able to go out there a couple times and see, hey, this actually does go in the way that the plan shows, and everything's kind of there. So, but we've also done some projects where, the field staff gets out there and they just kind of do their thing, and everybody, everybody's kind of, it's a free for all. So there kind of needs to be that accountability on the back end of it, that we're actually going to, follow the model for what it is. We do spend a ton of time. I know that we did a project in, I think it was in Utah. It was a school that we did. And we were working with the contractor as they were pricing it. They just said, hey, what's the cost to do design? Looked at the files. I'm like, man, this is a really nice school with all these architectural features, fancy glue lam beams everywhere. And that was my first question of, what's the BIM going to look like? And they said, they're not BIMing it. They're like, okay, I can't see this happening. I've done a lot of these large, 200,000-300,000 square foot schools, and they typically BIM it. And they're like, nope, we're not BIMing it. And, we got invited, they got the contract, cut us loose on design. We were getting the CAD backgrounds updated, and all of a sudden we get an invitation to a BIM coordination meeting starting the next week. And it's like, called the client, like, what the heck? He's like, yeah, they decided after the fact that the owner decided that maybe we should BIM this. But they said it's light BIM, air quotes, light BIM.
Okay.
So
there's levels to that?
That's what a lot of when you're talking pricing, that's what everybody says is light BIM. We're going to lightly BIM this thing. It's not going to be super detailed.
Just some of the ducts.
Yeah, just some of the stuff, just the big stuff. 12 weeks should top it. It's like, okay, we've done a lot of schools that go for much longer than a year. So we ended up, we said, all right, we'll BIM it. You guys need us to do this, but we're going to just kind of charge per week. That's typically what we do, is charge by the week or by the meeting. We got into it, and they had it in an email. And again, documentation is everything. So we had an email, say, from them. that maximum it's going to be 12 weeks, 3 months. So I think we ended up having 68 weeks of BIM by the time we were done.
Yeah.
So
you don't just stop BIM at your 12 weeks.
No, you just, and again, they decided to do the BIM after the fact. So they already had block walls going up, and that was the biggest thing is they kept bouncing around of, okay, well, where's our critical areas? Well, it was this huge spalled out project, a 3-story, school, and they were phasing it from 2 different ends. So they kind of had a BIM over here and then BIM over here and then BIM over here. It's like, well, our riser starts where BIM ends. So we got to get all of our stuff from point Z to point A. So it caused that's one of the things is the, we're always looking at a schedule. We're always looking at a what's the BIM schedule look like if there is actually a schedule? How do they phase it out? Because sometimes, just because it's the first area you're BIMing on the fire sprinkler side of things, you got to get your piping from point A to point B. You don't know your sizes. A lot of times you're doing some of that stuff. So you're kind of guessing when it comes to sizes. You kind of have to oversize some stuff, but then that even causes issues if you're figuring, 2 or 2.5 inch branch lines or something just to be safe, for a 6-inch main versus 4-inch main. Well, now if you're making offsets, your takeouts are different. So,
right.
You're trying to thread the needle up and over some ductwork and stuff, and you change from 6-inch down to 4-inch. Well, your takeoffs change. So, now I need to add a filler piece, or we need a roll of 45 or something to make it fit. So, it's just, those are some of the challenges that we face.
So I'm guessing that our design niche area is unlike the rest of our industry. We have plenty of designers, right?
About like fitters. So,
so what makes an effective designer?
Being curious, I guess. Always wanting to double check yourself. You can fly through it pretty fast, but I always find myself, even when I'm designing, I've been doing this for a long time, you always kind of have to be curious of, well, I think that's what the code says. But it's been about 8 years since I've dealt with this type of situation. So to earmark it, or to go back and double check your codes when you're done, to double check that you have the ductwork in there, you have the plumbing in there, rain leaders or whatever it is, just always being cautiously aware of your surroundings when you're designing something. Just there's so many different anomalies that play in. Is it an FM job? Does it have to be, do the products need to be FM approved? And from our perspective too, we're a design company. That's all we do. So I'm not, a lot of our guys aren't just working on one project. They're kind of, usually in design, you're kind of usually waiting on some information. You get some stuff designed, you have to submit some RFIs, and then you're bouncing to another project. Well, this one's an FM job, this one's not. You have different listed products for this versus this. We're bouncing from contractor on the East Coast to a contractor on the West Coast. Which one was seismic? Which one do we have to take seismic considerations in? Which one don't we? Which one of these projects has concealed sprinklers and which one has semi-recessed? Just a lot of those things. If you can get on a job and design it from start to finish, it's a lot easier to be efficient with your time. But as everybody that designs knows, it's a lot of times you're waiting on information, or you have to submit RFIs and things like that. So a curious mind. We've had really good luck lately. We've been hiring students out of SDSU, which is 60 miles north of us. It's a college, 4-year engineering school. I mean, they've got a handful of other disciplines that they teach.
Jackrabbits?
Yeah, Jackrabbits.
Good football program too, yeah.
Yep. And then the School of Mines out in Rapid City.
Okay.
So we started an office out there. Austin moved from, he was an alumni from School of Mines, a mechanical engineering student. Couldn't find a job out there, so he came on, did some plumbing for our company for a while, and then transitioned over to fire sprinkler, moved to Sioux Falls. He just really didn't want to leave the Rapid City area. It is pretty cool out there. So he moved over to Sioux Falls because we had an opening for a designer. So I had no idea why this plumbing apprentice was applying to be a designer, and then come to find out he was a mechanical engineering student. It's like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. But his goal was always to move back. That's kind of where he really liked it out there. So we had been talking with the School of Mines for a while about they've got good students out there that like to stay locally. There's not a ton of jobs out there. So we moved out there, and we're moved out there in May of, not last year, the year before. Now we're up to Austin, moved back out there and fired up an office out there. So we got 5 guys out there now. As of last week, we've been training in Sioux Falls just because we have more staff over in Sioux Falls. But mechanical engineering students have been great. kind of one thing we've noticed is the 4-year students. I feel that, my partner was a fire protection engineer as well, so he had to go through the 4-year program, and he always kind of said, he's like, even if you can graduate, even with a lower GPA, he's like, man, engineering school was tough. It took a lot of focus and a lot of discipline to not give up. So that is one thing that we found with the 4-year students, that we've been having better luck with them. Just seems like when they have to go to school for 4 years, run through a 4-year program, they're a little bit more life disciplined. They're kind of caught, I think they're taught some of that stuff in school of, don't go bouncing around from job to job to job. It's better to stick with something. So we've had good luck hiring some engineering kids from those schools. In the past, it was just kind of, we had more work than we could handle. So we just wanted bodies, and then we thought, hey, we can teach anybody how to teach sprinkler design. But we always kind of say around our office, either you get it or you don't. Right. And it seems like after about 3 to 6 months, you can kind of tell if you can get over that curve or not. But yeah, we've had really good luck hiring, engineering students, but they're also a little bit more. They're hard to get because there's a lot of demand for them in a lot of fields. So that's been our challenge is making sure that we bring on good talent. We're able to compete in the marketplace with what we have to pay our staff, and then what we have to charge to our clients for doing work for them. So
that brings up a good topic, because it was interesting. I remember probably 2 conventions ago where we sat around a table and talked about, like, there's not really a design apprenticeship program to get those people, the mechies that come in, and get them moving in the right direction like there is in your more trades. So can you talk to me or talk to us a little bit about how that process has looked like, or maybe what the best approach is when you're starting to design or train designers?
Yeah, so we struggled with that. That was our biggest thing was how do we train somebody that's coming in, We tried a handful of different methods. We'd bring a guy in and, just kind of bounce him around the office. Hey, work with me, work with Jason, work with Austin. Everybody has their own way of doing things once you've been designing for a handful of years, you kind of get your ways about you that you want to do things. And one thing that was always interesting, Darren and I worked together for a long time. We always got along great. We still get along great, but the way he designs may be different than the way I design. And then if we take an apprentice, designer, whatever you want to call it, an entry-level designer, and he's working for Darren and I, kind of back and forth between some projects, the way that I'm instructing him to do things sometimes is polar opposite from the way that Darren's telling him how to do things. And they have a lot to learn in fire sprinkler design. There's a ton of things to learn just when you're getting introduced to it, and then having two supervisors that are teaching you how to do things 2 different ways, it just adds to the complexity and confusion for them. So what we kind of started doing was we kind of pared that back, and now we assign each designer to a senior level guy, and that guy is kind of your mentor. That's the guy's teaching you how to do things. Either way is fine. And we run a handful of different programs. We run AutoSprink, we run SprintCAD. We've got a couple guys in Revit now. The way that you design in one program versus the different program, the way you go about how to do it in the software is different. So we finally just said, hey, if you're going with Sam over here on the AutoSprink side of things, or Austin, they're going to be the ones teaching you, and you need to kind of just do it the way they're telling you to do it. Eventually, hopefully, we can immerse you with giving you some diversity with working with Jason or myself or Darren on the SprintCAD side of things. Not necessarily that you need to switch softwares, but just our methodology might be a little bit different than these guys over here. So that's kind of helped. Once we get about a year or so into them, then it is nice to get them to working with some other guys, just to kind of see, oh, hey, there may be, I do like that way that you teach it versus the way that he's got me doing it over here. So that is kind of nice, but we feel like about a year in for our guys is we kind of got to get that much time under their belts, so they kind of feel comfortable enough to, well, hey, I like this way better than the way I've been getting taught this last year. I'm going to shift a little bit. And if you're doing that at the 2-month or 3-month stage, they're really not as sure of their abilities as what they probably should be, or they're just making the shift and not knowing why they're making the shift. So that is one of the things that we started doing. But I know in our office, we try to standardize training as best as we can. And again, like you said, there's really not a whole lot of training out there. So we used the the AFSA's design training program. We kind of used that a little bit. But again, it was really, really outdated. Hadn't been updated since 99 code, I believe.
It looked like it too.
Yeah. Computer screens that were as big as your desk. And so I don't internally, we were constantly just sitting with the designer. As a senior level designer, you just sit next to him, telling him what to do, telling him how to do it. Internally now we try to write processes for, hey, here's how you spot a sprinkler in this software. I will say that AutoSprink has some pretty good training out there. It's a newer program than some of the other programs. They've got some good training. So obviously we use their training. And then this, how we apply that to our projects, our people teach. But as far as learning the code goes, we kind of bounce back to the AFSA program. But again, it was fairly outdated. That was part of my interest in starting to go to the board meetings for AFSA, starting to get on. I got on the A&E committee, I think in 2021, I believe is when I got on. And my desire to do that was to work with AFSA to try to push them to start working on updating this design standard, because there's just nothing I feel out there in the industry that is a program that will, for the lack of a better term, give a career path to a designer when they come in. Like, hey, here's where you start. Here's a program. Again, I went through the AFSA fitter books, and again, it started you at the basic and it brought you more through advanced, and it took a while to get through it. And it really kind of mirrored what you were supposed to be learning in the field from your foreman, whether it's threading pipe or grooving pipe. But this is in a similar fashion. I really wanted there to be a series out there that you could bring them from spotting sprinklers to, laying out pipe to elevating pipe to running hydraulic calculations. And then in the more advanced side of things, getting into some of the things we were talking about with BIM modeling, some of those advanced features, more complex systems, standpipes, fire pumps, those sorts of things. So that was really my passion when I joined the A&E committee, was to try to get in AFSA's ear. I know they've got a lot of training that they're working on. And my company was interested, like, hey, if there's a lot of good data here, let's digitize it. Let's take it from the old, whatever it was. It wasn't up to date. It wasn't like we could get it in a Word document. Our goal was to help facilitate updating the text, bring it up to the current standards, as well as just bring it into the 21st century, I guess.
Y'all did a great job. I hadn't looked at it since our meeting because we've got a bunch of things going on. And it seems like you can get in there and click on things, and it brings you to links externally as well. And multi-lesson plan I was looking at there. What was your thoughts in trying to digitize it and bring it up to the...
Well, one thing that's been nice about this, we've always had challenges with, obviously NFPA, has their publication, requirements. You can't just copy and paste. Even when I'm doing a webinar or a PowerPoint presentation at AFSA, I can't just put in there NFPA 13 section 6.2.2.3 says to do this. You kind of have to paraphrase it because of copyright laws and rules behind NFPA. But one thing that AFSA was able to do in the process of writing this program was, where we can't just copy paste the code into the book. Now with NFPA Link, you have the resources available. If you have Link if our guys have Link in our office, so if they're going through this training, if it talks about, hey, here's the code section on AHJs, well, you can click on the link and it'll bring you to NFPA Link, and it'll bring you right to the terminology.
So keeping up to date is fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Then you don't have to go in there every year that there's something moved or an addition changes. It just brings you right to the current standard. So that's been awesome, because that was always one of the challenges on my end. Like, if we were going to try to write something internally at Driven, writing it was a huge lift. And then on top of it is, by the time you're done with it, you're probably going to be 2 or 3 code cycles further along, and you're going to have to maintain that document. So, and there's also, again, in the digital age, it's a I think we're still trying to figure out what direction we're going with the delivery.
Looks you to certification programs and how to get your
there's links to about everything. There's links to like he's looking at right here to submit a question to AFSA.
Making what work for me. I love it.
So no, everything's kind of at your fingertips there. If you log in and you're going through it online, I think there is talk of still being able to have a book, like a hand a printed document.
Right.
I think they're still trying to figure out the delivery method, but for now it's just writing the, I wouldn't say writing it, it's rewriting the stuff.
Kevin got 3 answers wrong on his first review test. This is great.
So no, it's been an endeavor. I think, I don't know how long we've been working on this, a couple of years. I know I've been pushing AFSA to try to get this going for a number of years. And again, volunteering our time. We've got 3 guys in our office that are on this committee, this subcommittee. I know, Signs Group, Western Fire SenCal has a handful of guys in there. Byron, he helped write the AFSA, the fitter books. He helped on that big lift. He's in there, and then he's got a handful of guys from his office. Casey Milhorn, he's with All Star Fire, with part of Pie Barker now. I know Pie Barker's got a handful of guys in this. So
multiple eyes, different perspectives.
Yeah, different perspectives. Again, we're a design company, so we are looking at it from the eyes of a designer. But the contractors, obviously, who are going to be the majority of the audience reading this book, we also want to make sure that they understand, how to install pipe. The efficiencies gained from the field aspect of it. There's a handful of guys. Obviously, AFSA has a large presence here. So
we got education and tech. So I know, Kevin, you've been involved. Leslie with her program almost seems like a design development program. If I was trying to tie it to other programs, and Veronica's been working her magic. Seems like working all hours of the day.
Yeah, she's crazy. She's always working. So I know it's not odd to get a text wake up to a text, and it was from midnight or 2 o'clock in the morning, and she's in California now, so
it's even earlier than that.
Yeah, so
her and John.
Yeah, and she's always I talked to her on the I help do some classes on the VIP training side of things. I've kind of backed off a little bit there just because we're kind of in the thick of it. I feel on the design training program that we're working to build, but yeah, she's the same on the VIP side of things when she's trying to write PowerPoint presentations for the instructors. She's going pretty hardcore on at all times of the night. So,
well, really appreciate the time that y'all have spent. And it's great to have this discussion and make people realize that they're not the only ones in this fight of trying to get more people in and trying to get this training done. Is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I guess I'm hoping to deliver this. I'm with AFSA. Obviously, we are super excited about getting this design training program launched. I mean, it's a big list. I'm working on we've got AFSA board meetings coming up in a couple of weeks here, so I'm going to kind of give the board an update on our progress. Working with Robin in our office to get kind of a little short PowerPoint built with AFSA's help, and I don't know. I think we're calling it maybe 20% ish.
Okay.
Loosely. It seems like we're quite a ways on content, but a lot of the beginning stuff is just introduction to the trade type stuff.
Right.
We're finally getting into, we went through piping products. Now we're into system types.
Looking to launch this in sections, or are we waiting for a complete product? You said 20%.
I'm guessing it's going to wait until it's done. I don't think Kevin might be able to answer that question better than I can. So.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just get all the content updated from that 1999 edition up to the 2022 edition now. For
Big process.
Yep. Yeah. Luckily for sprinkler industry, not a lot of the technology's changed. Still, area of coverage of sprinklers, still the same process, all that good stuff. But
yeah, and the thing that we battle with is trying to figure out how in the weeds do we get. I mean, that's always our discussion of how far down the rabbit trail do you go when you're talking about design. Do you go all the way in, and again, when some of the sections that we covered at this point are kind of introductory sections, so it's like, how crazy do you go into pipe and fittings? Do you talk about everything known to man, or do you do kind of an overview and then come back to it later on more advanced features? So that's kind of one of the things is I don't think we'll really know 100% the order of how this data is presented until we're all the way through it. Our office has been using this data for 2 or 3 years now. Okay. We're kind of the pilot program, I guess, because we're bringing on a couple of guys every 6 months usually, and we
beta testers.
Yeah, we're beta testers. Yeah. There you go. That's the word I was looking for that I can never find. So that's kind of our goal here, is to beta test this program, because there's some things that we've already found when engaging designers, entry level designers into the program, like we thought we kind of knew how this would flow best. And then the first batch of designers that we ran kind of through this program in the new order, because we're using the newest stuff now. Now that we're 20% through, like we just hired a couple of guys. They started last week. So Sam's starting to teach a new class with these new guys, and we've got good, shiny new content to use. But 2 years ago, we were using the stuff from the older courses.
Right.
So now that we have the new content, it's nice. But also one thing that we found, like as an example, we thought that, blueprint reading would maybe go down the list a little ways. We would get into that a little later. Well, and then we ended up running a couple of guys through the class. And when they got to blueprint reading, and we spent a whole day basically on reading plans and specifications, their eyes, opened up like, why didn't you teach us this, 4 months ago? Like this would have been like all this other stuff we were learning, like we were understanding it, but we understand it to another level now that we've gone through blueprint reading. So, we fast forwarded that and we moved that way up the list just from feedback from actual designers that are getting trained. And, we're always, when we get done with a course, we're always asking them like, hey, how would you improve the content that you're getting? So we're getting real world applications. So hopefully when this program gets released, it's been through a little bit of a vetting process.
Most of the kinks are out.
Yeah, so pretty excited about getting this up and going and launched for the industry. I think it's needed. Yeah. We sell design, but I don't think we're ever going to have too many designers in our industry. Yeah. So that's why we're excited to help get this going. Having a good training process for the entire industry, we feel, is what's needed. So.
Well, Jared, really appreciate you coming out and speaking with us. Always a great discussion. To our listeners out there, really appreciate you downloading and taking a listen to our podcasts. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, also on Amazon and Podcast Addict. So really appreciate your listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
This has been the K Factor Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share wherever you tune in to podcasts, or head over to our website for more. Reach out to us anytime at technical@firesprinkler.org. Stay safe and always learn as we keep the fire protection conversation going.